Hey Rebels, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk about a chart pattern that's playing out and a chart that's proving that we're about to see a mega rally in the altcoins. So if that sounds good, like and subscribe, and we're just going to dive right in along with our weekly analysis. So I have right in front of me a gold chart and a pattern that's forming here, a cup and handle. We can see that oftentimes after this formation, we get an explosive move in that asset. Now, gold has also been referred to as financial conditions by Raoul Pal. He's a very famous macro investor. And so I have a couple other charts here that I'd like to showcase to see what I'm talking about here. So we have global financial conditions here versus the ISM, and I'll get into what the ISM is later. But what we can see is that financial conditions right here in red typically leads the ISM by about 9 months. And that is important because the ISM, which is the manufacturer's index, is very highly correlated to altcoins as a percentage of Bitcoin. So when we're waiting for this outperformance in the altcoin space, typically the ISM has to have a strong move in order for that to happen. We haven't had that this cycle. We've been waiting for it. Luckily for us, the gold chart, which is akin to financial conditions, is giving us a lead on that ISM. So those two charts basically show how gold is related to the ISM, or gold is related to financial conditions, which is then related to the ISM. So if I go back to the charts here, we can see that the ISM here, which is the manufacturer's index, a lot of times it's referred to as the business cycle. Bitcoin's price does not peak until we get a peak in the ISM effectively. And anything above this yellow line would be considered expansion in the economy. Anything below would be considered contraction. And we've actually seen that Bitcoin's had an amazing rally here while the ISM has been in contraction for the longest period in history. So effectively what we're waiting for is that breakout in the ISM, which is going to carry the altcoin space with it. Right now, we've had Bitcoin being the dominant factor in this crypto market, and basically everybody's just waiting for this ISM to explode and to the upside. And the thing that's encouraging is that gold gives us a 9 month lead. So we've had this explosive move in gold, an explosive move in the financial conditions, which basically precedes the ISM. So that's what I wanted to get to in this video. So first of all, we have this cup and handle, which is a very typical pattern to see in the markets. And we have the total three, which I have here somewhere, if I can find it. We have the total three, which is everything excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum, having this same pattern start to play out. We had gold lead the way, and this basically is uh, preceding that move. So we had gold taking off, and we see that the total three is completing this very similar pattern. So whether that happens in the next day or the next week or the next month, we don't know, but these things typically take weeks and months to play out. However, we can see that we're just getting ready for that breakout. The ISM has not yet broken higher, but we have that gold leading as a leading indicator. It's well on its way. So anyway, that's one of the major patterns that I wanted to showcase in this video, just kind of giving us a little bit of hope that yes, indeed, this alt season is about to come. And one of the reasons why we haven't seen it really take off is because the ISM has been in this contraction area. It's kind of throwing people off because everybody's kind of, I think we had that rally in last December or Q4 of last year, which really kind of got people excited, thinking that, okay, this is that moment where we're starting to take off and we're going to get that accelerated momentum in the cycle. And that just wasn't the case. And this is one of the reasons. But we have gold leading the charge, which is telling us that, hey, financial conditions are doing really well. This leads the ISM, and typically the altcoins can't really perform very well. It doesn't mean that there weren't tradable ranges. There were definitely tradable ranges and different trades to be had. But as a whole, the entire market isn't going to be very buoyant until we get these conditions met. So we have that leading indicator hinting to us that these conditions are about to be met, along with that classic cup and handle pattern starting to play out. Things are looking really good as far as that goes. So why don't we dive into Bitcoin as well, as far as the Bitcoin analysis that I like to do every week, just to kind of get us on the right track and keep us on the right side of the trade. And let me just delete this because we don't need that anymore. So zooming out again, we've been talking about this seasonal correction period, and it looks as though this seasonal correction is about to basically finish right here. So, and let's see, let me turn this trend line back on that we've been using. we've been also tracking a different pattern. We've talked about this seasonality that we've talked about it several times on the channel, where we have this seasonal period where we find lows during this period, kind of a sideways consolidation. So we've been talking about this basically since the three red week signal appeared right here, and we were typically after the signal happens, we see lower prices. We've only had one time this cycle where that didn't happen, and it seems as though this may be the second time that we don't actually see that because we're seeing strength after this signal, which kind of invalidates it. No signal works 100% of the time, and in fact, if it doesn't follow through, that is a signal in itself. So the market is signaling strength to us right now because this 3 week signal, which usually indicates lower prices, did not come to fruition. And so we can actually probably expect it's more likely that we're going to see higher prices from here. That on top of Bitcoin printing its highest price ever. And it looks like so far at the time of this recording that we'll probably close the highest weekly close of all time is a very bullish place to be. This is not a place where you want to get bearish on Bitcoin or bearish on the markets. A lot of people try to pick the top every time we get to a top. Everybody's trying to call the top and it's all over. It's a really dangerous thing to do in a bull market because, as you can see, even though you might have long sustained corrections and pull and drawdowns, it's not the top yet. So the other thing that we're seeing is, and again, if by the time this is done recording, we have a couple hours to the weekly close. But if we close above this trend line, again, that's another sign of strength. It's a trend line that we've had on the channel for quite some time. From the 2017 peak to the 2021 peak, everything's looking very strong. So Bitcoin, I'm going to delete this now. It looks like we have potentially completed that seasonal pattern where we were expecting lower prices, or at least during this period weren't expecting higher prices. We came up here above this trend line, everything was getting very excited, but we had a very good lead on the market due to our predictive cycles that likely that we were going to have more of a sideways consolidation or a correction before that happened. That has now played out, and it looks as though we are starting to see more and more strength come into the market. So that's very exciting there. Basically, the way, depending on how this candle closes, if we close above this trend line, that's very strong. Closing below these tops, not the end of the world. If we close above these tops, that's very, very strong. Closing beneath these tops, slightly weaker, but a close above all these closing prices, still a very strong signal that we can count on. So what's next for Bitcoin? Well, in my previous videos, I've talked many times on how to project price and how to predict where the price can go. And so far above us right now, kind of the mid 30s, 130s range is going to see some resistance. So if we blast through that and find that as support, then I think we have some further upside to Bitcoin that can be very exciting. So what else do we have here? We've talked about the exchange volume a lot. We're still in the sideways consolidation, but what I'd like to see is before we had that rally in Q4 of last year, we could just see kind of a sideways consolidation before the volume really took off. And that's when the space really exploded. That's kind of what we're waiting for, is to see an explosion in the exchange volume. We've been in a decline ever since. For all year, we've basically had a decline in the exchange volume. And then July, we kind of broke out of this long-term downtrend, and now we're consolidating on a higher level. You can see that we consolidated down here and we had that explosion in volume, and now we're actually consolidating at higher levels, indicating us that more money is actually sticking around in the markets. And when the exchange volume does take off, we're going to be able to see more sustained prices, higher prices. So that's a very good sign. I also pointed out in my Telegram group that it looks as if on a very granular level, if we zoom into this chart, we can see that contraction in the exchange volume. We're waiting for it to break out in a larger way and basically break these tops. That was what we would like to see sustained prices. And we can just see that we've basically broken out of that pattern and come down to a retest. Technical analysis is pretty cool because you can actually lay this on pretty much anything, and it's going to give you a sign. The same patterns kind of play out, and it's going to give you signals of strength and weakness. So it's very handy to see that. So we're just starting to see the first signs that the exchange volume might be cooperating in our favor. You can also see higher highs and higher lows, and that's what you want to see. It has technically been trending higher for the last month or so, so that's a good positive sign. The other thing that's a positive sign is that we've seen just a little bit of uptick in interest in Bitcoin, which makes sense. Usually Bitcoin leads the charge. This is over a 5-year time horizon, and we can just see that we're not at exhausted levels right now. So there's a lot of signals across the board that would signal a top, and we just aren't there yet. The other thing that I do like to see that I will have to pull up on the charts one of these times, but what we have seen is a divergence between the sentiment and the price, where we had fear on this bar and then we had extreme fear on this bar, but a higher price. It's happened a couple times this cycle, but the most notable time that it happened is we had fear during this time, and then we had extreme fear, let's see, during this time. So we were forming a higher low, but it happened on oh, excuse me. No, it was right here. We had fear here and then extreme fear here, but we had a higher price, and that basically kicked off the entire bull market. It's happened a couple times before too, right around here where we had a higher low. That's always a very bullish sign. It's nice to see that the sentiment hasn't gotten overdone at the higher prices. Once you see sentiment being completely overdone, like it was here at the higher prices, that's when you want to get a little bit cautious, and you can see what typically happens there once the sentiment is overheated, so to speak. So we're not seeing overheated sentiment. So even though we are at all-time highs, it looks like we have room to the upside before we see any other exhaustion. What else did I have? I think that's basically going to wrap it up for this video. I talk about Bitcoin dominance a lot and USDT dominance a lot. The only thing that I can see in the shorter term that might hang us up right now is we do have this old trend line back here, which called this low pretty much to a T. The other thing that could slow us down here is USDT dominance basically finding support on this trend line. So that doesn't mean that the bull market's over by any chance, but that could be a good profit taking area because if I just kind of clean this up a little bit and maybe drag these out of the way here, if I just clean this up a little bit, we're basically just trending or ranging right here. And so liquidity is kind of sloshing around between the different various assets, and we're not seeing clear trends to the upside. Once this breaks down in a larger way and this starts trending more clearly to the downside, that's basically going to indicate that there's continuous and consistent money flowing into the other assets. So that will be a very bullish sign. So the only thing that I'm really looking out for right now, we had a nice strong rejection on this trend line, which has basically acted as support for a very long time. Now seeming like it wants to act as resistance. We're still in a downtrend on a macro level. So what we would like to see is breakdowns of these levels, and certain as we come down, there will be certain profit taking areas. So that's basically what I'm getting at is when we reach these levels down here, those could be good profit taking areas. You may see a potential dip in the market, but until then, we're just not really going to be too worried. Other than that, we can see that the total two against Bitcoin is starting to play out. We had that breakout quite some time ago, had this pattern, this descending wedge pattern play out that we've been tracking on the channel for a long time. And we're waiting for this multiple wave structure to the upside, like we've seen in previous cycles, a multiple 5-wave structure to the upside. Looks like we've potentially completed wave one, maybe into a correction of wave two. So we may see a little bit more strength in the Bitcoin dominance temporarily. Yep, that's exactly what we're seeing right here. Nothing really to be worried about because we have this giant channel that we broke out of. And so, yeah, seeing a temporary rally in the Bitcoin dominance makes sense. So Bitcoin could lead the charge, which it usually does. And then hopefully, if the stars continue to align and the market continues to play ball as it has in the past or follow similar patterns, then we can expect to see Bitcoin dominance falling in a more substantial way. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. Again, I like to do things kind of short and sweet on the weekly analysis to keep things, cool and collected and see what the data is showing us. And so far, the data is showing us the leading indicators are telling us financial conditions are looking good. The ISM is potentially about to break out to the upside, which will carry the altcoins with it. Bitcoin dominance falling. All these different pieces that we keep track of to kind of give us an indication of where is the money. Because we can listen to the macro gurus and the economists all day long, but the charts are telling us the actual data and what's actually happening. Where is the money going? Well, right now, on the very short term, money is going back into Bitcoin, right? On zooming out, Bitcoin is losing dominance, right? So it depends on what time frame we look at, but the market will give us hints and will tell us what it's doing in real time. So I find it much better to go back to the charts, see what the charts are telling us, giving us a much better indication of what's going on, rather than trying to hunt on YouTube for people who have all the answers. My opinion is that the charts have the answers. I made this channel because I want to help people interpret the charts. Everybody's going to interpret it slightly differently, and that's one of the beauties of the markets in general, is that it's made of hundreds of millions of people with their different perspectives. But effectively, if you can learn how to read a price chart, it's going to help you in the long run, because then you won't have to rely on anybody but your own analysis, and therefore you can formulate your own trading strategies. So the last thing I'll leave it on is Telegram group is linked below, and that's where I have all my trades. And one of these times, these weeks, I'll probably go through my trades in more detail. But I always post my trade results. Had a campaign a while back where I took 5,000 into a $17,000 account, walked away with that's where the account went, and then walked away with a 2x, and now I have a $10,000 account. We're trying to see how much that can grow. Anyway, so all my trade results are on here, wins, losses. Everybody likes to cherry pick their wins and nobody likes to talk about their losses. I just post everything as it comes. If I lose a trade, I post it. If I win a trade, I post it. That's the point. You're not going to win every trade. The point is to be profitable over time. And so small losses and bigger wins, or at least wins that are bigger than your losses, right? So I have that going, and then basically all of my different trade ideas and entries, why I'm taking the trade, what kind of conditions have been met that trigger me getting into the market, where I'm going to put my stop losses and everything like that. So if I go here, I have quite a few trades on right now. Yep, that we can see. And so anyway, in further videos, I'll probably go over that in more detail, but these are basically just positions that I've opened up rather recently. Basically, once we started breaking down with the Bitcoin dominance in a larger way, started to look for various setups that I thought starting to look favorable. Like, for example, virtual is looking as though it wants to find support in this zone and possibly break out of this descending wedge, things like that. So anyway, in future videos, I'll go over each of my trades in detail just to give you an idea of what I'm looking for in the charts, why I'm getting in the market. Effectively, we're all bracing for this altcoin season. People have been waiting a long time. The ISM's kind of been slowing things down, but like I said, looks like things are actually looking like the stars are aligning for this final phase, basically, which has happened every other cycle. People think that this cycle is different. It's really not. Maybe the timing is slightly different, but the conditions to be met are all the same, right? So anyhow, long-winded. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe. Please leave a comment. If you guys made it this far, thank you very much. Please leave a comment, any constructive criticism, any videos that you would like me to do in the future. Greatly appreciated, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.